Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this City of Port Colborne Council meeting for October the 25th to order. At this time, call on staff for the national anthem. Great. And again, thank you, McKay Choir. Our land acknowledgement this evening. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hawendarok, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Proclamations. This evening we have one proclamation, Council, for Poppy Week, October the 29th to November 11th, 2021. If I can have Councillors Bruno and Bagu move that. Are there any questions? All in favor? Raise your hand. Thank you. That's carried. Adoption of the agenda. If I can have Councillors Bodner and Desmarais move the agenda. Any questions with regards to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. We have one disclosure of interest for item 17.1, Councillor Beauregard, due to his work company having interest in 1.1, the regular meeting of Council, October 12th, 2021. Councillor Wells and Beauregard, if they could move that. Any questions on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. So at this time, Council, I have the following items pulled for separate discussion. Item 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 8.6, 8.7, and 8.9. Any further items? Okay, so Council, with regards to the remaining items, including the correspondence items and the item 17.1, the memorandum from Mayor Steele and myself, rezoning of lot 71, Plan 59M-428. I'm going to do these separately because of the conflict. So for the items not raised, including correspondence, if I can have Councillors Danch and Wells move those. All in favor? That's carried. And then item 17.1, I'll have Councillors Bagu and Bruno move that. This is for the conflict. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. We do not have any presentations this evening, nor delegations. I'll get right into my mayor's report. So on October the 22nd, the Ontario government, in consultation with the Chief Medical Officer of Health, released a plan to safely open Ontario and manage COVID-19 for the long term. This plan, which can be viewed at www.ontario.ca, outlines the province's approach to lifting the remaining public health and workplace safety measures by March of 2022. The plan will be guided by the ongoing assessment of key public health and healthcare indicators and supported by local or regional tailored responses to COVID-19. Effective this morning, capacity limits have increased for restaurants, bars, and other food or drink establishments. Where dance facilities are not provided, facilities used for sports and recreational facilities, including areas for spectators within those facilities, areas where personal fitness trainers provide instruction with those facilities, and water parks, casinos, bingo halls, and other gaming establishments. Ensuring you get vaccinated is still very important. Visit ontario.ca for vaccination locations. A reminder that you must show proof of vaccination to enter certain businesses and recreation facilities. Please ensure you carry this with you. If you need assistance in getting a printed copy of your vaccination record, stop by the public library right here in Port Colborne and they will assist you. Please watch our social media pages for complete updates as we receive them from the province. And at this time, it is still important for you to wear a mask and maintain social distancing. Staff are continuing to offer customer service here at the City of Port Colborne to support residents, businesses, and visitors by phone, email, website, and social media channels. If you have questions in regards to City Hall services or would like to report a concern, you can contact a customer service representative Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. by calling 905-835-2900 or via email customerservice@portcolborne.ca. Alternatively, you can visit our website, www.portcolborne.ca, and submit a service request or inquiry by clicking on the Request a Service tab located on the top right corner of your website page. A big thank you to Bell Media for hosting the Best of Niagara Awards and to the residents of Niagara for participating and voting H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park as your favorite. With a beautiful scenic backdrop of the marina and Lake Erie, a Discovery spray pad, accessible playground equipment, and recently updated walking trails, it's no wonder it's a favorite Niagara Park. Just a reminder to everyone that our Public Works Department has started their fall street sweeping. You can help by not sweeping your leaves and sticks onto the road. We ask you to place these in paper or compost bags for pickup weekly on your regular garbage day. Also, please try to minimize parking on the roadways and remove all hockey and basketball nets from the edge of the road. For the past several years, fall has brought some significant windstorms to Port Colborne. I'm sure everyone remembers October the 31st of 2019. During these high-volume rain and wind events, residents are being asked to keep their culverts and catch basins free of debris to minimize the potential flooding. And also, please avoid any creeks, ditches, or streams. Includes the roadway around H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park, which has been the scene of heavy flooding due to rising lake water levels. On Saturday, the food drive took place, put together by the Lions Club, and the food is going to Port Care's Outreach Center for the food bank. Really like to thank all the volunteers. I was with the Golden Puck Committee, which has done this since day one. We had over 20 volunteers and 5 trucks for our routes, but there was many people out on the streets collecting the food, and we really thank those that donated, and all those volunteers that helped either at the collecting portion or at the staging at the Barrack Road Church. Again, it's a need that's that we have in the city, and we again thank those, and we'll continue to take food, whether it's at any of the grocery stores that may have a bin out, or at Port Cares, or through any Lions member if you want to donate. So please continue to donate food to our food bank. On Saturday afternoon, we had the Brock Badgers play the Windsor Lancers in an exhibition game of university men's hockey. Myself and Councillor Bagu attended the game. We had around 250 to 300 spectators that came. They had a great day. There was lots of minor hockey kids. And really the big winner of the day wasn't Brock because they won, but was Councillor Bagu. He took away the biggest door prize that they had there. It was a giant hockey game. We all remember his kids, and I'm sure he already had it home, and he's been playing with his grandkids. Hey, Mark, I'm sure you've been doing that. But it was a great event. Just some people that we have to thank. First and foremost, the Marsh family for donating the cottages for the Windsor Lancer team, also donating their farmhouse that is at the Sugarloaf Farm out on Lakeshore Road West. The kitchen there, which is fabulous. Windsor brought their own chef, and he cooked up a storm all weekend for that team. It was a great outing for the team and a team bonding weekend for them. Also staff here at City Hall, our staff at the arena, Luke and Blair Hollinetti, I want to call him Matt, that's his brother, and Blair, Brian Thiel. Our security team did a great job that day, and you know what? The one thing I got to state, the people coming in were happy to be there, happy to be back at the Valet Center. Everybody lined up. They were pleasant with our staff and our security team checking the vaccine passports and tickets and everything else. It went so smoothly. We got people in the door. It was just a great day had by all. So I really want to congratulate those that attended. And although it was a bit of a wait, but not long. And again, it went smoothly. And the product on the ice was phenomenal. You know, most of the players are ex-junior players that play at university nowadays. So it was fun. Brock won 4-1 on Saturday, and then Sunday Windsor went into Seymour Hannah and beat Brock 4-2. So we congratulate both teams, and we are planning on hopefully making this an annual event to showcase university hockey right here in the city of Port Colborne. With that, councillors, any questions? You're not taking bids, Councillor Baggy, with regards to your big prize? Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make that game, but I have to say, I want to put a plug in for the people that do the security at the Valet Center, including that day I was there twice that morning for different grandchildren playing, practicing. And both security guards not only do a great job on the COVID check, but they were also ambassadors and even mentioning the game that night. And I thought, what a nice touch that they were part of trying to promote the Valet Center and that event. I don't know if they'd been instructed to, if the one I talked to just happened to be saying it as I walked by and to others, but you know, it just shows that it was a really rounded team effort, and I think they're doing a marvelous job over there under sometimes trying conditions. So just those guys are real ambassadors for us, those guys and gals. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Councillor. And I can't be remiss on the minor hockey volunteers that came out, and they ran a little bit of a concession stand for those that were there. And I'd like to also thank all the businesses that donated door prizes. We had, I think, Mark, I think it was well over 60 prizes that were handed out throughout the afternoon. So it was a fantastic day. As I said, to get back into the rink and to see people in the rink, and we're starting to get to see some normalcy here in the city of Port Colborne is just fantastic. So another great day. The regional councillor, Councillor Butters, is not here this evening. If anybody has any regional questions, you can either send them to the councillor, or if you have them for tonight, you can ask me. If not, please forward those to both of us and we'll look after that. Seeing none, we'll get on to staff remarks. Staff, anything to bring forward to council? I don't see anybody. Okay, nobody here. Scott, you don't have anything? Okay. Amber, nothing. Okay. Councillor's remarks. I'm going to start with Councillor Baggett.
Just one comment about the hockey game I won. My son scooped it up within 10 seconds of seeing it, Mr. Mayor, so I didn't even get to open it up and play with it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Councillor Bodner.
All good, Mr. Mayor. Staff take care of everything, are working on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing tonight. I just want to apologize in advance to everyone. I'm having some connectivity issues tonight, so my internet is unstable. If I freeze, well, just bear with me. I'm sure I'll come back shortly. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wells.
Nothing tonight, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Danch.
Just when you thought you were getting off easy. I just wonder if we could get maybe a small update on Erie Street, if we knew what was going on with the water and the construction. I know the weatherman's not being kind to us here, but just wonder if there was any updates.
Mr. Kalamuto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are looking at, well, we have put it out, and we are, I believe we're taking a look at the submissions that are going to be coming in. I believe that it's a little bit too late in the year to unfortunately start, so it'll be a spring start for Erie. I don't think that we'll be able to squeeze it in with the shovels in the ground and impending snow, but it is well on our way. What I can do is provide an update to all council members through email if that is appropriate.
Yep, that'd be perfect. Councillor Danch.
Yeah, that would be great, Chris, because I've had a couple phone calls and we know the lines went down there a while back and, all the different things and stuff. But no, I mean, the residents are kind of bugging us and hopefully you can send something out to all of us and make sure Gary's included, of course. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beauregard.
I have no remarks at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Bruno.
Everything good. Thanks, Chris. Dwight contacted me today about some of that trimming I mentioned last week. So all got done. I just ran out before the meeting and saw that it was done. So thanks.
Great. I did go to you, Councillor Bodnar, correct? Yes. You just shuffled on my screen here. Okay, Council, we're on to items requiring separate discussion. Item 8.1. Bear with me, I'll pull that up. The subject is 235 of Office Report 2021-270 be received. That the design guidelines outlined in Appendix A be approved for the 235-241 Welland Street, and that Council direct the Economic Development Officer to issue the request for proposal regarding the sale and redevelopment of 235-241 Welland Street. I'm going to have Councillors Desmarais and Beauregard move this, and this evening we have Mary Lou Tanner, Principal Planner, NPG Solutions, and she will be providing us with a presentation. Mary Lou, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor Steele and members of council. It's my pleasure to be here. We're going to have one of the staff run the PowerPoint for me, and I will provide remarks. I want to say on behalf of our team at NPG, we're really honored to be able to work with you and your staff team on this project. It's an exciting project for us, and it's an exciting project for the city of Port Colborne. Our task was to prepare urban design guidelines to support your official plan, zoning bylaw, the East Waterfront Secondary Plan, and the East Waterfront Community Improvement Plan to support the forthcoming request for proposals for sale of this property and redevelopment of the property. If we could go to the next slide, please. I want to start with some site context, and we think it's important that particularly for proponents and people who are looking to purchase the property, that we provide in the design guidelines some context of the location of the site, and particularly what we feel is really, really important about the relationship to downtown Port Colborne across the Clarence Street Bridge, key infrastructure such as the cycling network on the Friendship Trail and along both sides of the Welland Canal, connectivity to local parks, and the land use context. And I do want to acknowledge that there is an error on this map. The area on the west side of Welland Street, south of Nickel, is designated park, not light industrial, and apologize for that error. We will get that corrected in the final version. But really what this map is to show is that walkable area where the site is located. So the site is more or less in the center. You can see it labeled subject site. And when you look at 400 meters, that's about a 5-minute walk. And this portrays a really powerful image that downtown Port Colborne is within a 5-minute walk of this site. And you can see within 800 meters, which is the 10-minute walking radius, there's even more of the downtown. There's incredible parks, including access south of the property towards the Lake Erie shoreline. This is a mixed use area in the East Waterfront. There's industrial uses, as we can see, as well as planned industrial uses. There's residential uses, and this site in particular is what's in a mixed use node that is intended for redevelopment and to support new housing and new commercial business within the East Waterfront secondary area. And you can also see the very close proximity to the Welland Canal and Welland Canal infrastructure, including the Clarence Street Bridge. Could we have the next slide, please? The vision and guiding principles for the East Waterfront Secondary Plan really set the context for the work that we have done. And you can see in this extract from the East Waterfront Secondary Plan on the right-hand side of the slide, the subject site is shown towards the top of the graphic with a star on it. And that's in what's called a mixed use area, which permits a range of uses, including small scale commercial uses, townhouses, and apartments, but really encourages mixed use buildings with commercial on the ground floor and residential above it. There is a height permission of around 2 to 5 stories as well within the secondary plan and the official plan. And it sets the context for the design guidelines because it talks about the buildings addressing and framing the street, parking located at the rear. And one of the things that we've really built on, and you can see it in this slide, is the connectivity to downtown Port Colborne from the site and the relationship to the infrastructure in the area, including the parks, the Clarence Street Bridge, cycling and road infrastructure, and pedestrian infrastructure. The Clarence-Welland-Durham intersection gets particular attention in the East Waterfront Secondary Plan as a gateway to the East Waterfront Secondary area and provides safe access for both pedestrians and cyclists. Can we have the next slide, please? You can see on this slide, and I want to start with the image on the right where the subject lands are located, like directly across the Clarence Street Bridge. And it's not news to you, but for proponents, we really want to impress upon them that as you come across the Clarence Street Bridge, the view to this site is the premier view that we really want to capture and focus on in the redevelopment. So we want to create a visual anchor, that building that you see, it looks exciting, it looks enticing, it's something that's going to draw your eye in and draw you to that, particularly if you're a pedestrian or a cyclist coming across the bridge from downtown Port Colborne. We want to focus on supporting the secondary plan and the official plan in enhancing pedestrian and streetscape amenities in the area. There's already a lot of really good amenities, and this is about enhancing and building on the really strong amenities that are in this area. But we also need to recognize that there is industry existing across the street, and there's planned industry in the area, and residential uses and new residential and mixed uses can coexist with industry, but we need to be sensitive to that particular context. Could I have the next slide, please? The official plan designation is mixed use in the East Waterfront Secondary Plan area. It is intended for either small scale commercial buildings, some townhouses, or apartments of 2 to 5 stories with a minimum height of 2 stories. And that's important because you really do want to get that visual anchor that draws your eye to this area of the East Waterfront. And commercial uses would be on the ground floor with residential above. The downtown commercial zone is the zoning for the site, zoning bylaw or the secondary plan, but are elements that we think are incredibly important. So for example, active transportation and ensuring that there is a connectivity from the front door of the building to the sidewalk for pedestrians, so that you, as you're standing on the sidewalk, you see the front door, you know it's an access point, and you trust that you can get there. And that's a really important concept, see, know, trust. And that's really something that we've really built throughout these guidelines. The same is true of cycling, ensuring that there's safe cycling parking for visitors and the interior of the building has cycling parking for residents. Things like access and parking. We want to make sure accessibility is provided in the parking spaces and that they're closest to the door where they're located in the parking area. We want to address landscaping and ensure there's appropriate landscaping, particularly as there's residential uses that abut the rear and south lot lines of this property. Within the second key component of mixed use and residential building design, we talk about a number of issues related to setback height, architectural features, and the facade treatments. I'm going to spend a bit more time on that in a minute. And in the commercial building design, we focus on the key elements that we really want to get right in terms of the design of the building. Things that, again, aren't necessarily captured in the zoning bylaw, but become really important in creating that visual anchor in the East Waterfront area. So height of the building, signage. We don't want signage to overwhelm the building, but we want businesses to be having signage so that people know that they are there, and making sure that the parking and servicing areas support the building, have sufficient parking and servicing, but that it doesn't detract from that visual streetscape that we really want to create and connect. If I could have the next slide, please. So let me start with the site organization and design, and I spoke about some of it on the previous slide. This image on the right shows you some of the key elements that we think are really important. So the dashed blue lines are the existing sidewalks, and those become important for the pedestrian connectivity within the East Waterfront area, but also to Clarence Street and the Clarence Street Bridge, as well as cycling connectivity on Welland Street to the Friendship Trail, across the bridge, and into the Greater Niagara Circle route. We've numbered the elements on the particular site so we can provide context and expectations. So number one, for example, is residential front yards to include 1.5 meters where we aren't having encroachment of things like street furniture or anything that is going to detract from the front facade of the building. Number two, active uses at grade. So you want that connectivity that pulls you into the building. If it's a commercial building, you want to see a lot of windows, doors that show you the access, signage, and imagery that tells you what's going on in the building, whether it is an office, a coffee shop, a restaurant, something like that. Those visual cues that take you to, you know what you're seeing, and that's a place you want to go to. We want to make sure, number three, I spoke about it, pedestrian connectivity to the sidewalk. You know, when we see a front door of a building on a street, it's a good thing. And there are many examples, unfortunately, where the front door is hard to find. Make it easy to find the front door. The building becomes an attractive anchor. We want to make sure we have appropriate side yards and rear yards because on the east side, as I said, and the south side, this adjoins low-density residential neighbors. So it's important that we are providing that buffer to the existing residential neighborhood and respecting those uses which are planned to continue as low-density residential uses. Next slide, please. Within the mixed-use buildings, I'm going to first start with the images on the right. So if you look at the smaller image on the first row on the left, this shows some of the key design elements that we really, really want to focus on. So the first, and this is a 4-story building, is there's lots of windows. So there's lots of light that will come into the building in the afternoon because the building will face west. So the tenants will benefit from that. But at the same time, that architectural mix of glazing and brick really breaks up the solid brick building and makes it a more attractive and inviting building. You to the Welland Canal and an ability to watch what's going on in downtown Port Colborne and really, really help animate the street. The other thing that's really, really important, and you can see it in both of these two images, is that you cannot see any mechanical equipment at the street level, whether you're looking at it from the Clarence Street Bridge or if you're standing at the street level. You want to really disguise the mechanical stuff that's on top of the building. It's not a great look. And we think that given the visual anchor that this building is going to create, we really want that disguised. And we want proponents to know that going into it. And then on the lower slide, you can see what's going on in an active downtown street where you have commercial uses at grade, you have people using the sidewalk, and it's a very busy place. And you have residential above. You can see that there's great street treatment with the street light, as well as some of the hanging baskets. We think it's important that there's greenery and street trees. The secondary plan really calls for that, and we really support that. And we've referenced the NPCA's native species guidelines for proponents to look at in terms of expected planting, because those are local native species and generally drought tolerant as well, which is also very important. Next slide, please. With commercial design, you know, a standalone commercial building is a permitted use in the zoning bylaw on this property. We think it's important that we really provide context for commercial building, but to be honest, we think a mixed use building with commercial and residential is the way to go. So we talk about the height in particular, and you can see the height of that first floor. With mixed use buildings, it is a little bit higher on the first floor because you need that space within the commercial building to provide the mechanical equipment. And if it's a restaurant, you need it for the fans that are used in the cooking area. We want to make sure that there's appropriate signage, but that signage doesn't overwhelm it. We want to make sure there's what we call contextual considerations. So there's lots of windows on that main floor level, and there is that connectivity to the street so that we can ensure that any business there does draw in the street traffic as well as people who are coming to the destination specifically because of the business. And we identify that parking and servicing areas should be located at the back. Again, these are all really important things to create that visual anchor, to create that east and west symmetry between downtown Port Colborne and this mixed use area in the East Waterfront secondary plan area. Some of these issues are not discussed in the zoning bylaws, so we think it's important for proponents looking to acquire this property that they understand that these are very important considerations for the city of Port Colborne. Next slide, please. I want to return to the drawing that I started with in that 400-meter walkable area. And what we see on the left-hand side is just a number of key elements that are so critical to the contextual considerations for this particular site and the opportunity that it presents for really active placemaking by making sure that your vision for the connectivity between east and west sides of the Welland Canal, the importance of the public realm with the parks, with the street trees, with the active transportation of pedestrians and cyclists, and the ability to use the local road network for cars, that is really captured within the design guidelines. This is active placemaking because what you're saying is there is an expectation of enhanced design for this site because it's an important one for the city and its development. I've included two images on the right-hand side because I think it's important to understand that where you are going is where the best-in-class communities are going. The slide on the top is from Stockholm, Sweden. And you may think, well, that's a really big city and not relevant. But this particular neighborhood within Stockholm is a smaller neighborhood. You can see that it has industry, it has housing, and they coexist very, very well within the context of that waterway. The slide below is from Burlington, Vermont. And this is an example of creating that focal point where you're using the infrastructure you have. In this case, it's a street to really drive to that public building. And you can see the buildings on either side have a lot of the elements that we've talked about and a lot of the elements that you see in downtown Port Colborne. But what you're really doing with this site and these design guidelines is creating that visual anchor that draws your eye to that. And when you see it and you know that it's there, and you trust that you can get there across the Clarence Street Bridge with safe pedestrian and cycling access, as well as vehicular access, you are going to be drawn to it. It is not to compete with downtown Port Colborne.
Councillor Bruno up first.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mary Lou. Excellent presentation. I was very pleased with how concise you compiled a lot of information that might form the part of an RFP for this site. The one thing I did want to mention to you is I would like, for the purposes of going forward, not just on this site, I think your presentation makes for an excellent template to fill in the blanks with the different details of whatever site we may have for sale, and not for every site, but for sites that aren't an infill on a back street. But I think even for those, the template presents us with an opportunity to sell lands in the best possible way. I was going to ask you though, in your opinion, to turn this into actually part of a RFP or an offer to people, would you say it's fair? I guess my critique is, and it's probably not what you were tasked to do, is that this sort of lays the state of the state out, but it really doesn't necessarily focus in on what we as a city or a council may want. And in particular, I thought on the slide where you have the official plan section that pertains to this lot, I didn't know if you could comment on perhaps things like that. We ought to put the word current in brackets. And I say that not to be cute, but not to mislead a proponent who may have a bigger vision even than we have, that whilst that's the current OP, and by stating it, it doesn't mean it has to be that way. It means they could ask for an amendment or embellish that with their plan. I guess I don't want to shut off the proponents thinking that these are finite guardrails, and that's what you have to work in. So I don't know if you can assist with where you think the next step might go in this to put it into an RFP. and perhaps from your experience, how others may have taken something like this and moved it forward.
Ms. Tanner?
Thank you. So those are great questions. So in terms of current official plan designation and current zoning, yes, absolutely, we can add that to the design guidelines. And you know, there is always a place for process in planning, and you know that as well as I know that. And what we really want to do with these guidelines is talk about the importance of design, but not handcuff people. So these design guidelines are scalable for a different configuration of a building. It could be taller, it could be less than 5 or 6 stories, or the maximum permitted height in the zoning bylaw. But they are scalable elements, but it is creating that quality of place. And in terms of not handcuffing proponents, you know, this gives them a baseline to begin with. Architectural design and getting a good architect on a project like this is going to be critical. And what you're really communicating, message you overall are communicating in this RFP with these design guidelines, is that design really matters for this site. And if you want to spur innovation in architectural design, if you want to spur innovation on this site, absolutely push that. The planning process is there to bring those ideas forward and then test them against your feedback as council, the technical review, the community feedback, and you as council make a decision. So there's absolutely a place for process in this work, and proponents and the wise proponents will understand that they are making a decision either to go with the existing zoning or to look at an alternative form that would require a decision by council.
Thank you, Councillor. Further
Thank you.
questions?
Yes. Mayor, I just wanted to hello. I think.
Oh, you're freezing, Councillor.
Oh, sorry. I can see me. I'm not freezing, but maybe it is at your end.
It is.
Okay.
There you go.
Can you hear me still?
Yep, we got you. Go ahead.
Just the fact that I think if you look at this is a bigger deal than it is right now. We just decided to take a lot for sale and turn it into what council and the community's vision is. You know, that's a huge step if we keep moving forward that way on particular sites. And I want to be constructive, not critical, but I guess I'd like to see more of that when staff puts these properties out for sale. As much as I backtracked and said an infill lot, you know, isn't going to take the gravitas of this.
Councillor, this is question time. Remarks will come forward when we're debating the actual motion that's on the floor. If we could keep questions to Ms. Tanner.
Sure. Well, I was just at the end anyway, so I won't repeat it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I have Councillor Demery next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't actually have a question for Ms. Tanner. I had some comments that I'd like to make.
Okay, can you bring those forward when we put the report for debate?
Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Mrs. Tanner. When you're looking at this, do you see any, and by the way, this is a great presentation, great vision for us. I think this is fantastic. It gives us an opportunity for us to develop the east side and marry it to the west side. I think it's fantastic. And in doing that, the actual construction or the facade, if you will, the delivery of this package that you are looking, is there any way we can enhance potential buyers in order to embrace what exists downtown, what exists on West Street, so that we can have more of a mirroring or a blending, and you used the term symmetry, so that we can have the canal as that visual line of symmetry, where what we have on the west, we're going to develop on the east. Is there a way we can enhance that with potential purchasers of this property?
Mary Lou?
Thank you very much, Councillor Wells. We will ensure that content gets into the design guidelines in the introduction and particularly the context description. And I think taking away from feedback we received today from council members, we really want to beef up the content related to downtown Port Colborne in the design guidelines and that symmetry that I talked about and what you just spoke about as well.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Great. Any further questions to the speaker? Councillor Danch.
Sorry, I couldn't get my raised hand to come up. Just because I'm looking at the one picture and it says New York, Yimby, next Portland, and see Niagara. That so much looks like the corner of Port Colborne. Is that what that is?
I don't think it's the corner of Port Colborne, to be honest, because when you come across the Clarence Street Bridge and our visits to Port Colborne and the imagery that it doesn't look like it, but it's not far off. The concepts are very much the same, that the buildings are at the street. There's a healthy sidewalk. There's second floor uses that are either residential or other businesses, but it's very, very similar. I think in the final version, we will include images of downtown Port Colborne. You know, picking up on the conversation with Councillor Wells, I think it's important that we include that in the final version.
Yeah.
And that's great. It's just, you know, you can see the quality of the construction on the upper levels and, you know, the way the brickwork's done and stuff like that. And that's very similar to what we have right on
It
our
is
west.
very similar, yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. So just with regards, those are image credits. So the New York Yimby, the next Portland, and see Niagara are based on the photographs that you see. So those were taken from those three organizations. Obviously, the bottom one is our West Street with Gail Todd's old store on the corner at the old Mahaffey building. Further questions to the speaker before we go to the main motion? Okay, seeing none. So we do have the motion on the floor, Council. Now is the time for either questions to staff or comments. So I'm going to go back to my list. Councillor Desmarais, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to thank Gary Long and Bram Cotton for listening to council during that meeting we had and taking council's direction in engaging MPG rather, and Mary and making this happen so quickly. I'm really kind of surprised that we've got this back so quickly, and it is just a wonderful piece of work. This fills me full of hope as far as the future of Ward 2 goes. It would make a big difference to see this kind of thing sitting on that corner. But I do believe it's really, really important to apply design standards to all development that's intended for anything that is gateway in nature or any key location in the city. I think it's just a really important thing. And I believe that these standards will really inform the areas surrounding those as well, because if you're going to do any development at all, you're going to be looking to something that's already happened or guidelines that are already in place. So I think it's important work. It looks to be something that will really make for a great future for the city. And I just wanted to thank all that was involved. I know that Ward 2 is going to really benefit from it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to, I believe, Bram. What we've heard tonight and what we've seen tonight is a presentation, and it's all fine and great, but there's made references, and Mrs. Tanner made references to draft guidelines. And you're asking, or council is being asked to approve the design guidelines, but they were not in the package. So I guess what I'm asking for is, are there actual draft guidelines or final guidelines that are available? And if we are approving them, where are they?
Mr. Cotton?
Through Councillor Wells, sorry, I have a bit of a frog in my throat tonight. I believe that we can use this to create the RFP, and that this is an outline of the expectations that we expect from any bidders on the RFP. So what we're asking for is approval of the of the draft guidelines that we can then include in the RFP that we would like to issue in the next couple of weeks on this property.
Counselor?
I understand that, and I understand you're asking for approval of the draft guidelines, but again, as I said it originally, these are not draft guidelines. What we have is a presentation with some good visuals, but nothing other than what's in the official plan or the zoning bylaw on setbacks and requirements, encroachment requirements, and so on. What we don't have in front of us is, and what you're asking us, at least what I understand you're asking us to approve, are actual guidelines, be them draft or final guidelines. And these would be guidelines like, well, the facade has to be of such a nature to represent a marine heritage type of look, or the mechanical has to be on the roof or in the back, not visible. Those, I guess, those guidelines, I'm still looking to try to see them and find them so that I can look at them and approve them.
I'm going to have CIO Louis jump in on this one.
So as for your worship, to Councillor, well, to council generally, I think the councillor is right. I think there is sort of a missing piece of the puzzle, and if we're going to complete the puzzle, we want to make sure all the pieces are in there. Perhaps the best course of action, if I can recommend it to council with deference to Mr. Long and Mr. Cotton, is to go through and complete the RFP and have council see it one more time before it's released for public.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Wells, is that fine?
I lost the audio from a bit of Scott's, but what he was referring to, or what I guess that we're being asked tonight, is to approve the guidelines as outlined in Appendix A, which are not there. And then we're further being asked to approve the RFP now for, so I am a little confused of whether the horse is in front of the cart or the cart's in front of the horse.
Yeah, I think what you might have missed, we keep freezing up here. I don't know if it's the weather outside or what it is, but CIO Louis stated that the fact that the between staff and the consultants from NPG will bring back the RFP with those guidelines attached, so staff can have a look at that, and then it'll be sent out after that for request for proposal. So through to Mr. Long and Mr. Cotton. So in essence, really what we want is this to come back for us to see the RFP, and then at that time we'll issue the release. So if we can take the third bullet out of this today, can you have that come back at the next meeting, Mr. Long?
For you, Your Worship, we'll make that happen.
Okay.
We appreciate council comments.
Okay, Councillor Wells. So how can we do this as a friendly amendment, Madam Clerk?
Just get one of them to do this.
But your mayor, again, on bullet 2, it says the design guidelines outlined in Appendix A be approved for the address.
Yeah, we're going to change that, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so if I can have you move it, and I'll have Councillor Beauregard second. So really, it's the Chief Administrative Office Report 2021-270 be received, and that the design guidelines within the RFP process be brought back to council prior to the RFP being released, and at that time, council will vote to release the RFP. Is that fine, Madam Clerk? Okay, Councillor Wells, you're all right with that?
Excellent, thank you, sir.
Councillor Beauregard, you're okay with that? Okay. The original mover, Councillor Desmarais, you okay with that? Thanks, I appreciate it. Further comments, I have Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Wells eloquently filled in, I think, what was missing. The other half of that equation is everyone says, and then we'll show you that, and the RFP can go out. I would like to see at that next report with the RFP, the delivery mechanism and to whom that the RFP was going out. So now we've got a great product, a great description. We just got to make sure we close that up with who is getting it and via what means. So I wouldn't mind seeing that in Graham and Gary's report. I don't know if you need as well an amendment for that, Mr. Mayor, or that can be understood as direction.
No, that can be understood as direction. Mr. Long, Mr. Cotton, you're okay with that, guys? Okay, that'll be in the body of the report then, Councillor?
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any further comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Item 8.2. The Chief Administrative Office Report 2021-272 be received. That the patio season for any sidewalk-based patios with existing encroachment agreements and all other rules followed be permitted as a trial from November 1st, 2021 through to April 30th, 2022, and that it be reevaluated in April for future years, and that the Economic Development Officer be directed to consult with the Port Colborne-Wainfleet Chamber of Commerce, local business improvement areas, and businesses on a permanent policy regarding patio season length. If I can have Councillors Desmarais and Bagu move that. I'm going to go to Councillor Desmarais first. We do have Mr. Poisson in attendance if anybody has any questions for him. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I asked that this be referred to staff for their comments, I was expecting a report back that would speak to snow removal, ice conditions, the general ease of walkability for people in the wintertime going up and down West Street, any issues around the heaters, any obstructions. I really was looking at that kind of thing. This report doesn't really address those things, but it does bring up some other interesting comments, and I would like to hear what the feedback was from the Chamber of Commerce, to hear what they have. And I have several questions around this, and I can lay them all out right now. I would like to know what staff is thinking about snow and ice and ease of walkability, whether or not that in a trial that will certainly, I'm sure, be measured in some way, shape, or form, but I would like to hear what that trial period would measure. Is it going to look at those things? Is it going to look at other factors as well? And how will those measurements happen? What kind of reporting process or postmortem will happen on this trial period? Who would be at the table for that postmortem? All those kinds of things is what that's what I was really looking for. So I know I just put a lot on the table, but possibly staff could make some comments on that right now. I'm not at all against having a trial period. I think trial periods are always good because you can get a lot of answers during those things and resolve a lot of issues as well. So, and I'd also like to know is there a trigger mechanism put in place whereby if this really isn't working, if it really is causing a problem, can the trial period be ended right there, or does it carry right through? So all those kinds of things are what I want the answers for. If it's possible to get those tonight, I would really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll go to Mr. Cotton first.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Desmarais, I'll do my best to answer all of your questions. Again, I apologize. I seem to have a frog in my throat tonight. I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm just going to pull up my report. So under the internal consultations were done with the bylaw division, fire and emergency services, building, and the public works department. Fire services has no objection. There will need to be an inspection of the clearance and code compliances. Bylaw has no objections to the awning or the heaters, as Canalside already has an existing encroachment agreement with the city, and the Seaway and any further encroachment would need to be amended to the existing one. Bylaw would require the site plan. Building, in order to comply, was issued to remove heaters or apply and obtain a building permit by November 1st. If that's completed, they have no objections. Public work also has no objections. The city does not maintain the sidewalks in the wintertime. and it's the responsibility of the businesses to do so safely, to advise that they can keep the snow in the interlock area of the sidewalk. This is where the road snow will go. Also, city staff will need to cut down the snowbanks if they get too high, and the area will need to be clear for the city staff to do so. So within the city departments, the staff comments are they have no objections to an outdoor patio. There doesn't seem to be any issues. The sidewalk is not ours to maintain. It is the responsibility of the building owner. There's no mechanisms in place that prevent this from happening outside of our current patio season. So if council was to agree to it, we could offer them a trial opportunity and see where it goes. It wouldn't just be for canal side. I spoke specifically to them in the report, but we'd open up to any of the local restaurants and businesses that have existing encroachment agreements with the city. It's not specific to one. I did speak specifically to some of their issues, specifically around the heaters and the fact they were and the awnings, but it would be a trial for other businesses that may be interested.
And with regards to any of those operations not following the guidelines that you've set out here or what staff would set out, it could be withdrawn at any time. You have no issue putting that into the agreement, Mr. Cotton? That I think it was one of the questions.
Yep, no issue whatsoever. If our guidelines are not followed, then that would be withdrawn.
Okay. Mr. Lawson, with regards to snow removal, that'll come under your department with bylaws. Can you add any insight on this or anything else to add with regards to this project?
They would have to, through your mayor to the rest of the council, they'd have to follow the bylaw on snow removal and the time periods within that. I think we could work with Public Works to ensure that any issues surrounding that sidewalk and the snow getting piled on the snow is taken care of.
Okay, Councillor Desmarais.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, again for you. So we have assessed some things. I'm just very concerned about the safe passage of people going through the area. And I'm hearing, well, it's not our responsibility to clear the snow. All right, fine. But how do we make sure that the people of Port Colborne safely get through that area? I mean, there are people who do walk in the winter, and West Street is a very walkable street. We encourage that all the time. I just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make it as safe as possible. And that if things aren't going well, I can understand putting something in the agreement that you can pull the plug on it. That's fine. But I'm just more worried that we aren't putting the right safeguards in place to make sure that it's safe to walk on. And I guess mostly I'm talking about de-icing. That particular sidewalk and that whole side of the street there is very uneven, and it's difficult to walk on sometimes in the best of times. But if you get something that is rather slippery, you've got ice, you've got wet surfaces, that makes it very difficult. And I'm talking mostly about our seniors, people who aren't necessarily really stable on their feet anyway, but they use, that's an area that they do like to walk in. So I just would like to make sure that special attention will be taken to do the de-icing. It's been a pet peeve of mine for a long time, not just at this spot, but all over the downtown area, because we have all kinds of uneven surfaces there. So,
thank you.
If I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Desmarais, I believe through the bylaw enforcement, as Chief Lawson mentioned, and also we can make special mention of that in the agreement. And if it's not being adhered to properly, again, it could be as you said, a trigger mechanism to stop.
Thank you, Mr. Cotton. I'm going to go to the CAO.
Through your worship to Councillor Desmarais, I appreciate the concern. I understand that council members might have some concerns about safe passage of city sidewalks when there's encroachments. I know, from time to time we have no snow at all during the winter, and then we have a few days, usually every winter, where we're down there trucking snow out of the city itself is trucking snow out of the downtown core. I think it's important for council to remember that the obligation is on the building owner operator, whether there's a patio or not. The patio is a 1-year trial. If we find, and it could be in other locations as other businesses come forward to avail themselves of the trial. So the trial's for the entire BIA. I think if we find that they're not meeting their obligations, we can come back to council in April and say, hey, this didn't work. I do know that the applicant in this particular case, and again, this applies to the entire BIA, but the charge was led by one applicant. The applicant is on the Zoom call, and if it's okay with council, maybe he could address the obligation to remove snow.
The question is regarding snow removal. We've had our business now for 15 years. Snow removal has never been an issue. There's never been a complaint regarding snow removal at our location at all. Obviously, we have 2 stores there, as well as a hotel that will require snow removal at all times. The business is open 7 days a week, being the retail store, and most likely the restaurant in the near future, as staffing is becoming better in our business now, as well as a hotel that is open 7 days a week. So snow removal, we've been taking care of it since day one. It's never been an issue. A couple things, it's a heated patio now, so I turn on my heaters. If ice is an issue, we do put salt down, but besides putting salt down, as soon as I turn these heaters on, there's going to be no ice on that sidewalk whatsoever. There are 75,000 BTU heaters there, so it's going to warm up that area nicely with the snow removal. We also take the patio in every day. It never stays out at night. It comes in and out every night. And obviously, everything's going to be adjusted based on weather conditions. I mean, if it's a snowstorm out, if there's so much snow on the road or on the sidewalk, we will never have our patio out on those days. If we feel that there is not enough space to get by our patio, it's not going to be out at all. My main concern is obviously November, December, March, and April, especially. Those are the days. Great if January comes up and we get a nice 5-degree day and it's a sunny day and somebody wants to be outside. Obviously there'd be no snow. If that's the case, then we would obviously be hoping to put the patio out and see what it does. We really don't know if this venture is even going to work for us, but we never know until we try something. That's kind of where we're at right now, is trying something different, see if it works, and hopefully in the future, if this is a good endeavor, we see more of these happening throughout the community with it. So, and I know regarding snow removal, it talks about sidewalk snow clearing. We do it all the time. Ours is cleared all the time. There's many businesses that don't in the street that obviously need to be dealt with. But I do not see, it's not my business whatsoever. That is a problem.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Passan. Councillor Demeray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, like I said, snow is not my main issue. It is ice, and that does concern me. So wet surfaces, when the cold hits them, they freeze, and that is a problem. So yeah, that does concern me. But moving on from that, I would ask for staff, going forward, when we are going to have a presentation come to us with a request like this, it would really be very helpful if it could come along with a staff comment on it, so that we know that staff has looked at it and that they can assure us that all the boxes have been ticked and that they understand what we're really being asked. You staff are known to be the experts in the area. You're supposed to be advising council, so I would like that to happen in any case going forward. This is why I had to send this back to staff for the comments, just so that I could be sure that we had all the right information. But I thank you. That's everything I had to say.
Thank you, Councillor. Just going to go to the CAO.
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Demeray, I apologize for the lack of information on the staff report. I just want to drill down for a little clarity. We do use the new staff report format that was brought in earlier this year or last year when we used agenda management software, and we have the internal consultation section. On the copy that was published, I see comments, or I see paraphrased comments, I guess, to use that word paraphrased, from bylaw, fire, building, and public works. Is the councillor looking for more than those paraphrased comments at the bottom of page 2 and top of page 3? Or like, is it a verbatim comment? Like, do you want excerpts from the emails? Or I'm just having trouble pinning that down because I want to go back to staff and say, here's what was missing from that report.
Councillor?
Actually, what I would have liked to have seen is this report accompany the request in the beginning, and then we wouldn't have had this delay making that decision. That's what I'm saying. If I had this kind of information in front of me then, I would have been better equipped to make the decision. It would have been helpful. But mind you, I would also have liked to have seen written down that, snow had been dealt with, that sort of thing. But that's okay. At least this report coming with the request would have been far more helpful. That's what I'm saying.
So through your worship to Councillor Demery again, I don't want to be contradictory, but my recollection is that an agent for Mr. Poisson, representative of his, appeared as a delegate. Like, this was an unsolicited request. Right. This wasn't a staff initiative, and council that night, we didn't know what the request was going to be, other than I think there was a written component to it as well. And council that night said, hey, bring back a report October 25th. And that's what you have before you. So this was a follow-up to the presenter from the last meeting in September, I believe it was. And so staff has tried their best to do the internal consultation piece where we talk to each other, the external where we talk to the applicant and the BIA and the chamber, and put this before council. But I will talk to staff about making sure that council has all of the information they need to make an informed decision, and that could include any kind of email communication between staff members where they talk about enforcement issues and so on.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, Scott, what I really am asking for is maybe we could change up the way that things are done when someone calls in and requests to do a presentation. Possibly at that point, we could be asking, someone in the clerk's office could ask what it would be about, and then staff could be alerted to just, give us the points that we need to know on this. That's all it is. Just give us a little something so we have something to go on. Maybe I'm asking for something that just can't happen. I just thought we could be a little more proactive and move things along a little quicker. That's all. If it's not going to work, I wouldn't worry about it. I just don't like having to send things off and refer them off to staff and delay the process. So I was trying to find a better way. That's all right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. I think the CAO's message has been received on that, so he'll take that forward with his senior staff. Next, I have Councillor Bagu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As a Ward 1 councillor, I did go visit Mr. Poisson. I checked him out actually when he didn't even know I was there. I watched people on the sidewalk, the waitresses, and then I talked to different businesses on West Street, the tenants, and most of them had no problem with this. Only one. But there could be other things involved in that. We talked about it was mentioned in some of the emails about the heaters, and there may have been a misunderstanding with our staff on the type of heaters that were going to be installed with all the building permit. I think maybe our staff thought it was like those patio heaters that like an umbrella stand type rather than the one in the wall, but I talked to Mr. Poisson, and that's all straightened up with building permits and snow removal. We talked about that. I'm confident it's going to be taken care of. This reminds me of when we first came on council. Somebody wanted to have a ski place off the 140 there, and everybody was worried about the noise, and it was brought up, well, why are we shutting them down before they even started? Like, prove to us you can't do it, and then we'll pull the plug. I'm confident Mr. Poisson could do it very well. And I did attend the BIA meeting last week. It was mentioned, and the BIA, nobody there mentioned having a problem with this at all. Actually, they fully support it. And I can't see Councilor Demery comment about the staff reports. When it did come to council last time, it was deferred so fast, the first speaker, the other councilors couldn't even have input. Like, it was tough. I had a lot of questions written down to be asked of this, but I didn't get a chance to ask those questions until staff came back with this report. So the bottom line, Mr. Mayor, I'm fully in favor of this, approve this trial, and thank you very much, Mr. Poisson, for keeping the business going. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beauregard.
Through your worship to Mr. Cotton. So Canal Side currently uses the city property across the street. That won't be included in this trial procedure, correct?
Mr. Cotton?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Beauregard, that's correct. It would just be the adjacent area on the sidewalks that would be approved, as would similar to all of the any other businesses that want to do that. It's only the sidewalk that would be adjacent to their business. So, for example, a stall on the street, which is what the summer patios are, that's not an option in the wintertime. It would just be on the sidewalk adjacent to the properties.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in full support of the trial with all the conditions on it, that if something is creating an issue or a safety hazard or some impediment to other amenities, that the trial be stopped or altered in such force. I support Councillor Demaray's concerns and put those forward. But one thing I would like to suggest or propose or give direction to staff is to increase their consultation area. We in the Niagara Peninsula really aren't winter orientated communities. We know we get the snow, we push the snow, we get rid of all of that and everything else. But we have communities within Ontario that are tourist destinations in the winter, such as Collingwood, Barrie, Blue Mountain, all those type of communities that I would suggest and recommend that our staff expand their consultation targets to include some of those municipalities to see what works for them and bring that back to us, so we have a much better success during this trial than we could if we just keep our insights into our backyard.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Further questions? Oh, I've got Councillor Danch, then Councillor Bruno.
Sorry, I can't. My raised hand's not coming up here.
Okay.
So through you to Greg, are you still in the background there? There you are, you little fella. So I've got no problem with Greg and his heaters. We know they overhang the streets, which is that's a concern right across the board. They're really not a patio heater. They're like a radiant heater. I mean, let's face it. And Councillor Bagg, you said the same thing. Patio heaters, you take them in and out. It's got a propane tank below it and stuff like that. I hope this works out for you, because I've sat on your patio. 12 o'clock in the wintertime, the sun's gone. I mean, you're going to be working your tail off if you're going to be heating that patio and that sidewalk, which is going to be a skating rink because of the pavers and stuff that's been used there. I'm looking at my other screen as I talk to you when I say this. I agree with the trial period. I hope nobody slips and breaks their neck, because that would be another issue for sure. I hope it works out for you. They say, I mean, with an overhang in the street and stuff like that, we're almost looking at changing bylaw rules and stuff like that, and building code rules. So hopefully all the best in this trial period. Like Councillor Bagnon said, when we let the ski people do their gig out on the 140 there, I hope this works out for you. But boy, oh boy, you got work to do, because that West Street, and saying that winter doesn't happen anymore, you don't know what old man winter and Mother Nature's going to do to us. But best of luck to you. I just want to give my little piece.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Two issues that I have. Like to see the trial, like to see business be innovative and come forward. My concern with those guidelines is that I would like to see, in the creation of that guideline, look, everybody's on the level playing field. You gotta shovel your sidewalk. Snow happens, sleet happens, ice happens. I just want to make sure that in those guidelines, that the advent of permission in the shoulder season and winter with heaters, to me, changes the paradigm. And the paradigm being now that there is going to be freeze thaw. I'm sure a heater that's not on all night with there no business there can create residual water or ice. So I'm fine if we get, because, you know, it's the deep pockets theory, right? Mr. Poisson, Canal Side gets sued, right? So does the city. Did we change the paradigm? Are we having, did we create a new situation by which different guidelines need to apply? Besides the usual, you know, vanilla bylaw that you got to shovel your sidewalk within 24 hours a day. We get that sorted out, I'm fine, but I'd like that assurance. Secondly, knows that if he fulfills all those conditions and the staff member checks the boxes, the permit gets issued. Doesn't have to come back to council for a second approval. The person's known all the rules ahead of time. They know that they've gotten approval conditional upon filling all these requirements, and the staff member will then sign off. That keeps the playing field understandable for the proponent. It keeps somebody not expending money and then having the rug pulled out from under them. So I think we need to do a better job at process, because there will be more people wanting heaters or new innovative ideas like people like Mr. Poisson come up with. And we need to be ready rather than reactive, put a process in place. So supportive on the trial period, check out the new paradigm with the lawyer and clean up the process. I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Cotton and Chief Lawson, with regards to snow clearing, with regards to these coming forward, as Canal Side would be the first one if this is passed tonight, and if any other businesses come forward, can we actually add in there that there will be inspections specifically on these in order to give council peace of mind and really give us the information as we move through a winter? Now, depending on whether we have snow or not, I mean, that's the big question. But at least staff can keep an eye on these locations specifically throughout the winter and just make sure everything's being followed. Is that fine through you, Mr. Cotton and Chief Lawson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, I don't have a problem having staff after a storm police that area.
Okay, perfect. Okay, councillors. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried. Thank you. Item 8.3, that the Public Works Department report 2021-153 be received, that key access to the currently barriered and locked road ends, being Lorraine Road, Silver Bay Road, Wildwood Road, and Pleasant Beach Road, be restricted to construction matters and be facilitated through the municipal consent process. That the fee for key access be $700, of which $600 is refundable after return of the key and lock in working order to Public Works staff, and that a fee be included in the 2022 fees and charges bylaw for any validated site visit investigations required by city staff because of misuse of the key. I have Councillors Bodner and Wells moving that. I'm going to go to Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we're going to ask for the D word on this, but I'm not going to say it because Harry might want to say something before we do that. Certainly Harry arranged a meeting that was informative, and I think maybe requires some more thought on this. So that's all I'm going to say, and turn it over to Harry. And if he doesn't do it, I'm coming back to me, Mr. Mayor, please. Thanks.
Actually, now that you've spoken on it, you can't come back and do a deferral. So I'll have to go to somebody else.
Okay.
So,
I got some backup. Don't worry.
No, it's no problem. I can go to Councillor Wells, but just once you guys start talking, you can't bring in deferral or referral. I'll cut you off, and then we'll have to go to somebody else. I'll go to Councillor Wells.
Well, it got started, so the D word is out. I would like to defer this until the Sierra Planning report comes back, and hopefully it will be addressed in some portion of that report.
Okay, can I get a seconder to that? And it can't be you, Councillor Bodnar. Councillor Beauregard, thank you. Mr. Kalamoto, anything to add to this with regards to Councillor Wells' deferral and it coming back from the consultant to council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, just with some updates with respect to that report. As this key report has been going through the system, just a report for the actual road ends study from Sierra Planning that we are hoping to have a presentation to council with respect to the entire road ends situation on the November 8th meeting. And then that will be a presentation from Sierra, which will...
That's fine with you?
Yes, that'd be great. Is it possible to just make a send out a thank you to the people that of that area that met with Ron and Barb and I on Saturday morning in regards in the rain, just to bring forward their comments and concerns. So I'd just like to send out a thank you to them for making it happen.
Great, thank you, Councillor Wells. I gave you some leniency there, that's fine. Madam Clerk, just for a point of clarification, if we could refer this back to staff and the consultant to bring back November 8th as opposed to defer, if that's fine with the mover and seconder. So Councillor Wells, Councillor Beauregard, that's fine with you guys? Okay. Everybody understand? Councillor Bodnar? If it's a point of clarification, I'll allow it.
Sure. So now that it's referred, can I speak on it or?
No, there's no discussion on referrals or deferrals, okay?
Just
sorry, but that's the rule.
That's
okay. Don't worry. You'll have lots of time in the next meeting. So it is being referred, council, to the November 8th meeting where Mr. Kalamoto will have the consultant bring forward their report as well as discuss on this. Okay, no further discussion. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried. Thank you, council. Item 8.4. This is the review of council composition, remuneration, award boundaries. The recommendations that Corporate Services Department Report 2021-274 be received. That the city clerk be directed to include a proposal for a comprehensive review of council composition and ward boundaries in the 2023 budget, and that the Director of Corporate Services be directed to include a wage in line with the 2022 average of local comparators to the position of City Councillor in the 2023 budget. I have Councillors Desmarais and Bruno moving this. I'm going to go to Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to thank the clerk for working so hard on this and getting it through, getting it put in front of council. It is something that is long overdue, and it was expected actually in the last term of council, but for one reason or other, it wasn't able to make it. And then COVID had put it off so far in this council. So I'm happy to be able to at least get it out there and get it on the table, and hopefully council can support this and we can start moving toward it. But I would like to propose an amendment. I would like to actually amend the third paragraph of the motion to include that the wage adjustment should begin at the start of the new term of council, so that the next council that is elected will start at the new wage. And that way they're not being asked to vote themselves any raise. We would be taking care of that. In any case, that's all I would like. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take that. Seconder to that amendment, Councillor Bruno. Madam Clerk, comment on that? You're fine with that? Okay. This is to the amendment. Everybody understands that any council remuneration changes would be the start of the 2023 council. Questions on that? Councillor Bruno, on the amendment.
Yes, it's that, if you could just clarify, that does include the citizen committee and consultant report.
Madam
with
Clerk?
Respect.
Yeah, Madam Clerk?
No, that was just for the annual wage, so not the stipends of the committees.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any further questions on the amendment? All in favor?
The clerk and staff who I wasn't able to get around to today, I didn't get a chance to really fully read because of the weekend I had till today, so I was kind of scrambling from noon on to double check with certainly the councillors directly involved in this amendment. So prior to 2010 and since then, while back on council, I've been pushing for a more equitable split between electors in all wards, but in particular Ward 1 and Ward 3. So during the beginning of the term, I brought this forward and there was lots of time to do this and it was on the plan to do it. And then a thing called COVID-19 came along and kind of messed all that up. There is two disparities in the Ward 1 and Ward 3 boundary and the elector. So I guess I'll divide that into two parts, Mr. Mayor. One is the current boundary between Ward 1 and Ward 3 is the center line of Delhi, Fielden, Carter, Steele to the railroad tracks. Effectively, it's the old Humberston Township boundary and at the Steele Street end, the former cement plant property. Most people probably think that the boundary between Ward 1 and 3 is Kalali Street West. It isn't. It's a much more convoluted route, and we always have issues with residents calling the wrong counselor because they're not sure of where that boundary is. In conjunction with that, there is a 969 elector differential between Ward 1 and Ward 3. In the past and currently, prior to COVID and post-COVID, I consulted with the Ward 1 counselors and my colleague in Ward 3. And looking at tonight's report, if we could amend, and I could read out my amendment, the boundary change to between Ward 1 and 3 would be a simple change to the center line of Kalali Street West from King Street to where Kalali West intersects with Highway 3. The northern, east and west boundaries would not change, and that disparity would likely be within a 150 resident equalization between Ward 1 and Ward 3. I have spoken to Councillor Kalaliff, who's not here this evening. As I said, Councillor Bagu and Councillor Danchin, they can weigh in if they want. So the recommendation that I would have would be that the clerk be directed to proceed with the requisite bylaw prior to the January 1st deadline, and that the Ward 1 and Ward 3 boundary be amended to the center line of Kalali Street West as the northern boundary for the between the wards, period. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bodnar, can I ask you to take over the chair position for a minute?
Yes, I will. Did you want to comment on this, Madam Clerk?
So I think what Councillor Bruno is asking is for the Kalali Street to be the boundary between Ward 1 and Ward 3. Right. My report obviously advises against councillors redrawing ward boundaries without a formal review, being independent, no public engagement being done. But regarding timeline, this does cut it close. There won't be any public engagement, but I can get a bylaw on the next council meeting, and it will include the 45-day appeal period. I will note that it won't stand up with an appeal, but I don't know if anyone would appeal this either. And the mayor is back in the chamber, so he can go back to being chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bodnar. List of questions on this. I've got Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll second that motion by Councillor Bruno. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's moved and seconded. Any further questions on this amendment to the motion that's on the table? Any further questions? Seeing none. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried. Okay, so that amendment's done. Councillor Bruno, anything else?
No, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Madam Clerk.
Can I have clarification that is the comprehensive review still required, or is this in replacing it?
Councillor Bruno, you still wanted to leave the comprehensive review, correct?
Yes.
I'm seeing a nod.
Sorry, yes. I beg your pardon. I hit my mute when I should have hit it open.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, that is still in there. Okay, so the motion has been amended. Any further questions to the motion as amended? Oh, sorry. Councillor Bruno?
Sorry, I just want one clarification. That's trying to get the review in before January 1st, correct?
Madam Clerk?
Sorry, the comprehensive review or your amendment? Your amendment will get done at the next council meeting because it has to, the bylaw has to pass and have a 45-day appeal period before January 1st.
Very good. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, I think the comprehensive review will come in with the 2023 budget deliberations, Council. So, all right, and everything else that the clerk has put in this. Any further questions to the motion as amended? Seeing none. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8.6, accessible parking on Fair Street. The recommendation is that Community Safety and Enforcement Department Report 2021-271 be received. That Council approve installing an accessible parking space on Fair Street from 36 meters north of Bell Street to 8 meters north therefrom, south of DeWitt Carter Public School, and that the bylaws to amend bylaw number 89-2000 being a bylaw to regulating traffic and parking on city roads and bylaw 4310/146/02 being a bylaw prescribing on and off street parking for persons with disabilities within the city of Corbin be brought forward. I have Councillors Desmarais and Bagu moving this. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really glad to see that this accessible parking is being made available for the DeWitt Carter School area. It's badly needed. There's no question of that. But my question is, do we have accessible parking available at each of the Port Colborne schools? And if we don't, can we please make that happen? That's it.
Mr. Lawson?
Yeah, through yourself, Mr. Mayor, to council. I can't answer that question, Councillor. It's a great question, and that's something that we can have staff kind of survey over the next week and get back to you if you wish.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. I have Councillor Bagu. Oh, sorry, Councillor Desmarais, anything further?
No, that's everything. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I did take a drive there, and I see staff with the artists. They drew out the lines and the wheelchair pictures, so I knew exactly where to go, so I appreciated that. One question I do have, Mr. Mayor, is I'm concerned, as Councillor Desmarais stated previously, the snow and ice removal. That parking spot is actually not on the school property, but it passes through a regional pump station onto the playground, which actually is City of Port Colborne, I guess, sidewalk to clean, and or region, and or just the city. I'm concerned about the snow removal for somebody using accessible parking, because it is quite a long ways that they have to travel to the sidewalk to get to the accessible door, Mr. Mayor. So if you can figure out who's going to do the snow removal, I'd appreciate it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bagu. I'm going to go to Mr. Kalamudu. Mr. Kalamudu, with regards to our process for handicap parking stalls, the snow removal procedure that your staff follows.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will double check with the manager and supervisor tomorrow to get an understanding of this particular area on fares of what is cleared and what is not with regard to the sidewalk. Just to note, through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council that with respect to accessibility, it would be at the driveway, I guess, if you want to call it, for lack of a better word, at the said pumping station and the school. That would be the first access to the sidewalk for accessibility.
Okay. And Councillor, just based on the two spots that are across from my office on King Street, staff does clear those entire areas out for access to the sidewalk from the vehicle doors. So they do the road work, and then they do clear, come down and by hand, they shovel that whole area out for people to get in and out of their vehicles specifically on the passenger side of vehicles. But I'll have Mr. Kalamutu get in touch with you with regards to the procedures that staff have been following. Is that fine?
Yeah, that's good, Mr. Mayor.
Good,
thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. To Councillor Demery's point, I think it is an excellent idea about schools and accessibility parking, but I wasn't sure if I understood things correct. So the direction to Chief Lawson is to check that all schools have that accessible, a handicap parking, or did I misunderstand that?
No, I think through Councillor Demery, I think we can give direction to staff to look at all schools. I know St. Pat's, which is near my house, has a handicap stall in front, so he can check all the schools. Some actually have them on their own parking lot sites, so I think he may, we'll take Steel Street School, for example, which is close to where we are right now. If they didn't have one out front, but they included one within their parking lot for families that needed that to come in and drop somebody off, I mean, those things, I think Chief Lawson's going to have to check in also. They may be provided by the schools, specifically the high schools have them on their sites for both staff and students. So I think that's what he's going to have to delve into, if that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's exactly where I was going. I knew a school where they're not close to the main road, but they put their handicap parking within their parking lot. So they have it, but it wouldn't require the city putting a stall on the street. And this was at St. John Bosco. So thank you for that clarification.
Good, thank you. And you're fine with that, Chief Lawson?
Yeah, we can follow up, and maybe just through a simple email, we can update council maybe by the end of the week.
Perfect, thank you. Further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you, council. Item 8.7, 2021 Drinking Water Operational Plan. Recommendation that Public Works Department Report 2021-267 be reviewed and that council endorse the Port Colborne Water Distribution System Quality Management System Operational Plan attached as Appendix A of Public Works Report 2021-267. I have Councillors Bagu and Demery moving that. Questions, Councillor Bagu?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just one or two questions. I guess Mrs. Sutherland's on, I'm not sure. But the Drinking Water Responsibilities Organizational Chart, it shows responsibility for the city of Port Colborne. My question is, where does the region have it before Port Colborne? And where does Port Colborne take over the responsibility for the drinking water?
I'll go to
the reason being is in past reports to this council, it's indicating we have a water intake problem or potential big problem with our water intake, as I'm sure the mayor is aware of it because it goes through the region for a potential contamination threat or something. And with a $400 million spending going to Chippewa for some sort of water treatment, I'm wondering, is the region going to take care of their part of our drinking water system, or do we have to push it more, Mr. Mayor?
Before I go to Cassandra Banting, who's here on behalf of the Water Department, I'm going to get some clarification through the CAO with one of your comments.
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Bagu. I think you're referring specifically to the intake protection zone and some of the wording that has been in past reports about potential risks to the source of water. These risks include, if salt from roads got into the canal and into the drinking water system, if farm runoff was too close to the drinking water system. And I want to assure the council member, the rest of council, and the public that these were sort of identifying worst case risks. They weren't necessarily likely risks. They were possible risks that were identified as part of a risk management exercise. And it is important to make sure that we identify those risks, but there also is a likelihood component of that. I mean, there is a risk of an airplane landing on Clarence Street, but it's not likely to happen, right? So, but when it comes to where the infrastructure turns over and where that sort of handshake between regional assets and municipal assets takes place, I think that that's going to be the director or his staff.
Of what this operational plan looks at. We do have the risk outcomes table, and so that might be something that you'd be referring to, and that's looking at we do evaluate the risks to our water, of course, and we do look at that more broadly, and we do look at it through the lens of the intake as well. So source water protection sort of looks at where your water is coming from, but our focus is just on the distribution and making sure that we're providing safe water through that network. So, but yeah, if there's a little bit more clarity, I can provide that as well.
Great, thanks, Ms. Banding. Councilor Baggio.
I think she answered the question pretty well off our main lines off of King Street, and we're responsible from there. So I'm pretty good, Mr. Bear. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Councilor. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you, Council. Thanks, Cassandra. I think that's our first time presenting here. 8.9. 8.9, Council. Winter equipment rental recommendation that Public Works Department Report 2021-276 be received, that council approve entering into a 5-year rental contract with the low bidder Amico Equipment Incorporated for a sidewalk tractor in order to complete the city's winter control maintenance, and that staff prepare the contract bylaw and the city clerk and mayor be authorized to execute the contract agreement. I have Councillor Wells and Councillor Bodnar moving that. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a point of clarification. I have been in communication with the Public Works and they've answered a number of questions. But on page 2 in the body of, and this could, Director Kalamoto can confirm this, but on page 2 in the body of the report, it refers to the annual rental charges. But then in the chart, it refers to monthly rental charges. The chart actually should be annual rental charges of $24,000. So I just think that's something to point out there, that we're not looking at $24,000 a month for rental for a piece of snow equipment that we're only going to use maybe 5 months of the year at the most. So if Director Kalamoto can confirm that, that'd be great.
Director, that's a typo, I take it. It should say yearly and not monthly.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Wells is correct. It is a typo. It should read annual.
Okay, so we'll have that fixed. Councillor Wells. Anything else?
No, that's everything. Thank you.
Councillor Danch.
Thanks so much. Through you to Chris. Chris, I know last year we tried to do a little bit of West Street along the promenade and stuff like that, and I believe that equipment was used. Are we looking at possibly doing that again this year? Weather permitting, and whatever the guys are doing.
Mr. Kalamoto.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dench and all of council. Yes, we are looking at continuing the same level of service that we provided last time. This particular piece of equipment was well used and worked very well with what we were asking it to do for the level of service. That is why we're coming back and asking for an additional rental, and later on a possible purchase of that equipment if it continues to prove that it is very good with regard to that level of service that we are providing. And so if that does come to play, we will be reporting back to council at if analyzing that and wants to move forward.
Thank you. Counselor, anything further?
Yeah, no, just, thanks so much. Definitely appreciate it for some of us walkers along the promenade and stuff like that. That's greatly appreciated. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried. Are there any notices of motion this evening? Okay, seeing none. Minutes of boards and committees. The Port Colborne Library Board Minutes of September the 7th, 2021. I'll have Councillor Bagu and Councillor Danch move that. Are there any questions to that set of minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Bylaws. Madam Clerk, we have bylaws 20.1, 20.2, 20.3, 20.4, 20.5, and 20.6. I'm going to have Councillors Wells and Desmarais move that. Any questions on any of those bylaws? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. There are no confidential items, no procedural motions, no information items. Ladies and gentlemen, that ends our meeting tonight. Thank you very much, and thank the public for watching. This meeting is now adjourned.